it had an unintended effect because my head wasn't always this big, it just grew a little bit recently. And despite the size of my head, I am not her son. I'm not biologically. But I might as well be. She called me one of her sons, and I'm happy to be so called. I actually hesitate to call her my colleague because I met her at the Office of the Trustee in Bankruptcy somewhat over 10 years ago. The hesitancy comes from the fact that being in the presence of this great lady, I feel like just a dot. But the irony is, you feel that way, but she makes you feel like a king. And I'm sure, I wish I could boast that it was only for me, but unfortunately, she allows some people like you to feel that way. But I just have to accept that. And just being around Mrs. Haisley, how are you, my darling, she would say, and that would make your day. But the fact that she may arguably be the nicest person you ever met doesn't mean that she was firm in the execution of her duties. She was a consummate professional. And those gentle reminders that, listen, you're going to get a conk in the head. And Dudley knows that all too well because we all sleep up. Can you imagine, at the time I was a deputy trustee in bankruptcy, she was consulting with the department, but she just took me under her wings along with Miss Hart. She took me under her wings even though as an attorney I knew nothing about bankruptcy law. And I think I did exceptionally well as a trustee in bankruptcy, and I owe that significantly to Mrs. Haisley. And I am truly blessed that in starting out my professional experience, I was placed in an environment where people are warm and welcoming and very professional. But most importantly, I found, as I mentioned, professionalism, but something that you'd not expect at a workplace. I found love, because I found an angel. I found Mrs. Haisley. And Mrs. Haisley, it's very difficult for me. Mrs. Haisley, with all the humility and pride I can summon, I will say that you have my greatest admiration.
This is a special occasion. I actually told her I was on a cruise because we talk every day, twice a day. So how am I going to get her not to call? She said, "But where are you going?" I said, "You know, when we old people plan things, we don't get the detail, but I will be on a cruise, and as soon as you hit Jamaica, you can call me." So tonight, it is indeed an honor, a privilege to be asked to give the gift to this special lady. Our relationship goes back 60 years. And during that time, we have traveled, we have cried together, we have laughed together, we have shared. But I tell you something most of you probably don't even know. This is one of the sweetest people I've ever met. And I'm not just saying it because it's easy to say things. There was a funeral, and the way they toasted the man, the things they said about the father and how good a son he was. The mother said, "Son, run and look with your father in the castle." That's not what I'm doing tonight. As a friend, trustworthy, reliable. You could share anything, and we did share almost everything. And then another thing about her, she's a good listener. I love to talk. I'm sure you know that. And she would listen, not too quick to give her comments, not rushing in where angels fear to tread, but she would listen. And it's the only person I've known who never had anything really bad to say about anybody. Bibbs could always sing. Only one minister was like that. And they all gathered at the funeral. because this man was a drunk. I said, let's hear what he's going to say. He never said a bad word. He said he has white teeth. And that's what Gordon would say. But it has been wonderful. I'm just going to share with you. It's not rare, often I get this opportunity to stand and speak and you all have to listen. But there are the stories of this oyster at the bottom of the sea. A grain of sand gets into under the shell, and you know it doesn't have hands, so it cannot move that terrible pain. What does the oyster do? He spreads layer and layer of a silky substance, and soon what was an irritant becomes a precious herb. I'm telling you that story because this, most of you may not know, faced a lot of difficulties. She had challenges, tragedies, difficulties that most of us would have grumbled, why me? But she, like the oyster, spread layers and layers of love and hope and peace and forgiveness over every situation. Instead of becoming bitter, it became her a better person. She didn't preach a sermon, but she lived one every day. The story is told of this young man. He was so in love that he ran to his wife and he said, darling, I wish I had 1,000 hands to work for you, 1,000 feet to run errands for you, 1,000 lips to kiss you. She said, don't worry about the 1,000, use the 2 you have. But let's use the 2 she had. Today we see the remarkable, we see, as we look around this room, the children, grandchildren, great-grand, and we see the miraculous job that she did. Babes, you taught me to forgive. You said don't sweat the small stuff when I would share things with her. It's not worth it. It's too big a price on forgiveness to pay. She taught me the value of forgiveness, of loving unconditionally, of giving and serving without looking for returns. Congratulations to a great friend, a great matriarch, a great lady. I love you.
As all good stories begin, I will begin this one. As all good tales are, so shall this be. And so all you just wait and see. A little bit of prose, and if you suppose, even a bit of humor, a little bit of candor, even a bit of fiction, a little part of fact, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Once upon a time, when the 20th century was young, when our heroes were unsung, in a place some of you may know and others may think of as a maze, where the grass is green and the cows still graze, where the birds still sing and the fireflies abound and the kindness may still redound. At the foot of the Moko Mountains, there was and is the place where the railways and roads meet, where people work and play and each other they would greet, known as footpaths. There lived a family of Lawsons, who many thought were awesome. The Lawson brothers, well known for their many trucks and their prowess at exporting citrus. Among the lot, there was one called Alvin, who some may say was quite hot. Way up in the Moko Mountains was a young and beautiful lass, and through the foothills she had to pass. And her name was Doris Gilfillian. They say she was 1 in a million. We imagine that the two met when she came down to get goods for her shop. And in footpaths she had to make a stop. And he, with his charms, sought to win her over. But as it was in those days, ladies had to play hard to get, lest one be branded as an easy target. So after much persuasion, she finally gave in. And Alvin Lawson knew that he would win. And when he did, when some 9 months later, he became a father and life became even greater. And when she was born, she bore the image of an angel. We imagine that she looked something like this. But those were the days when digital cameras were unheard of. Suffice it to say, the name she was given was a reflection of her, Angelita, Little Angel, and Lola, Angelita Lola Lawson. But such a beautiful baby the Moko Mountains had never seen, and such a quiet and peaceful one there had never been. And there she sprung, but not for long, spending most of her days in learning the ways of Grandpa Archibald and Grandma Jane, who was so kind and sweet and kind, a woman of Angelita Angelita's own mind. Because Mama wanted the best for her only child, she didn't want her to grow in the wild. She sent her to basic school near to her shop, where a Miss Henry taught her to sing and to clap. And then after that to primary school in Brixton Hill, where it was so cool. Then when Grandma Jane passed, Mama thought it was best to send her to a place that is blessed with 8 rivers and gardens of zest, to Ocherias, which was then a mere fishing village, where she stayed with Uncle Bertie, Aunt Lila, and V, spending the days swimming in the sea, and the evenings eating bananas and drinking tea. Such sweet memories of Ochi, going to the movies and eating matrimony, and the Christmases they had with all the food and the drunkenness. That time was never sad. And during the holidays, going back to Mama, spending time with special friends, Pearl and Lily B, playing all sorts of games and going from tangerine tree to tangerine tree, and eating the Chinese meals that their folks would cook. And they would come over, and Jamaican food they would look. And the school days in Ochi with Mr. Arthur were filled with lots of work, but also lots of laughter. And then it became her father's wish and will to send her to school in cool Mandeville, where Mr. Clarence Webb Harris would work his magic. And there she stayed until after senior Cambridge certificate, and after that to Excelsior to do higher school certificate. And after that to Telegraph School, which Mommy would say for her was not so cool. From Kingston to went to Port Antonio, working in the post office, but that would not suffice. Before long came the days of the RGD, where she met many of her dearest and truest friends, and some are here today. And it was while at the RGD that she encountered him, he with his fancy and with his whim. Mr. Haisley, not Donald, not Ernley, not Hugh or Luke, but the one who saw himself as the Duke, Raymond Baldwin, from the hills of St. Catherine, from the school of the Jago Plains, over the flat bridge, past Bog Walk, and then onto the Linston Lanes. And of course, she too, like her mom, had to play hard to get, lest she be branded as an easy target. But you know she was quite a catch. So if he was serious on her, he had to latch. If he was serious, he had to play his cards right, and that he did. And so in 1956, the two were wed, and she became a part of the Haisley clan. And lo and behold, she bore a child, and her name was called Andrine. But not long after she was weaned, came the firstborn son, Kurt. Not before accompanied Ray to Montreal, Canada, where she spent a number of years in the cold, just one of the many sacrifices I'm told. And it was there she stayed until it was time to return home, to resume her career in the civil service of this great nation. Then came Nikki and Camille and Garfield, and the grandkids came next: Kirsty, Lexi, Renee, Simone, Nicholas, Amanda, Caitlin. Then Nathan, Marcus, Michaela, Layla, Dominic, and who knows who else. Such unsurpassed devotion and dedication to her late husband and family has been amazing. The hard work at the trustee in bankruptcy, many of you can attest to, and many of us can attest to the scrumptious dishes that we've had, the ackee and the saltfish, all with tender love and care. No one can compare. The example that she has set, the neighbors, the love and the care, the sharing with them, the words of wisdom and the acumen, the family and the dedication with which she served her family, her husband, and family still, the readiness with which she welcomed each and every one of us into her lives. The hard work at the trustee in bankruptcy with meticulousness and tenacity. And although some of us, we don't say it very often, we know we love you very much, Mom. And today we all feel very blessed and highly favored to be here, to be a part of your life. And she has touched our lives. She has touched our lives in many different ways, and I'm sure she'll continue to touch our lives. True words have never been said as has been uttered by Desmond Tutu. You don't choose your family, their God gives to you as you are to them. Thank you very much.